Hello, this is Bill here from Nostalgic Inclination, the channel dedicated to you, all creatives, artists, musicians, and otherwise. Today we're going to be creating a comic strip and a piece of music to accompany it. Please like and subscribe. Our first order of business today is I want to give away a piece of art to one of you. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give away this animation cell Banana Man that I created in the last video to a commenter of today's video. All you have to do is comment on this video and subscribe if you're not already. And when I hit 500 subscriptions, I will randomly select one commenter on this video that is subscribed, and then I will get into contact with you and we will send this out. So hopefully this can be coming to you soon. Let's get to it.
Okay, before creating your comic strip, you want to create a plan on a piece of paper or in a notebook. You should know the beginning, middle, and end and what every pane is going to portray before you start. For the paper, I'm using a 100-pound Bristol by Canson smooth-toothed, which seems to work pretty good with the fine liners, markers, and colored pencils. In this comic, I know that I'm going to have text on panes 1, 3, and 5, so using a ruler I make parallel lines to keep everything uniform. As you can see, I used a cup to trace a circle, and I cut a template from a piece of paper folded in half like a snowflake for the fuselage of the rocket. This helps keep things uniform and consistent. You'll notice I'm working this project as a whole rather than individual panes one at a time. It helps keep things cohesive and again consistent. Without getting too technical, my best advice during the sketching process again is always to be very loose. The eraser is your best friend. And speaking of erasers, that little piece of eraser that I use is a Faber-Castell dust-free eraser. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It is the best eraser I've ever used. As you can see, my sketches are pretty clunky, but you keep on going and you carve out a finished product in the end. More important in art than technical ability is honesty and perseverance. With those attributes, you will be conveying emotion, which will lead to your artwork resonating with others and, most importantly, yourself. I have notoriously bad handwriting, and you can see the way I hold the pen is not how we were taught in school, but by keeping the font simple, uppercase, and following those guidelines that we drew in earlier, we should get pretty good results. Now we are on to the fine lining, and this is where our sketch is going to jump out of the paper, kind of like a Polaroid photo developing. It's best to try to work in some sort of order. As you can see, first I'm doing my panes, and I'm doing the cross lines, and then I'm doing the horizontal lines all together, so that way everything's consistent. And then I'll move on to the word balloons and the text before moving on to any of the actual sketches themselves. Fine lining can be intimidating because it seems like a point of no return because it's ink, but you can't be too rigid or otherwise you will make serious mistakes. Of course we embrace mistakes, but it's best to be loose even when working with the fine liner. If you do have a minor mishap, you could always correct it with a white gel pen. Now we move on to color, and this is where things really start to take life. For the base, I am mainly using Copic Sketch Markers. They're an alcohol marker and they work really nice. They're dual tip. They have a brush nib and a chisel nib. I hardly ever use the chisel nib, but you'll notice that I have both caps off, and that is to reduce the air pressure inside the marker, preventing leak, explosions, which will ruin your art and has happened. So we're just going to be safe and take both caps off of the markers when using them. You'll notice that I'm doing all the backgrounds first. Again, keeping things consistent. Not going from a detail to a background, back to a detail to a background, get all the backgrounds done, and then we can move on to the next piece. Working on this comic strip made me think of all the great cartoonists, and it gave me a real appreciation for what they must have had to endure coming up with 365 comics per year, one every day in the newspaper, having to have fresh gags that would make people laugh, having to resonate with old, young, and people of all demographics. Of course, the name of my YouTube channel and business is Nostalgic Inclination, and this is because of the respect of tradition and artwork and creation of yesteryear. And when thinking of outer space, I look at it from a perspective of the 1950s and 60s outer space. So it's kind of like futurism, but retro futurism. That's why I usually make my aliens green and my rocket ships like as if they came straight out of the Twilight Zone. There was a simple charm to the unknown. Nobody knew even what it was like to go to the moon, back when classics like The Day the Earth Stood Still was made. In the digital age that we live in, and that I probably couldn't live without, a lot of the charm seems to be missing because now we get too complex with everything. Going back to my previous video, we discuss how important it is to keep things simple, allowing us to focus on putting our heart into our work rather than getting carried away with the technical aspects. That's not to say that you shouldn't try to learn technical skills and become proficient in them. It's all helpful, but no matter what you learn, just remember, don't forget to break the rules. In art and all creation, it's always good to step outside of your comfort zone and really pour yourself into what you're doing. I can't work on a project without becoming fully immersed, and frankly, isn't that why we do it in the first place? What better form of escapism is there than creation? I can't think of any personally. If you want to make something, I would say just do it. I think a big problem that most of us experience is we're afraid that we can't do something, and therefore we never attempt it. But the key to doing anything is to just do it. Life is too short to not be doing the things that we want to be doing. Maybe some of you think, oh, making a comic, that's nice, but I'd rather make a painting on a canvas. My best advice would be to make a painting on a canvas, if that's the case. Now we're moving on to colored pencils and gel pen, the details. This is where we do the highlights, the lowlights, depth, and dimension. It seems like I say this a lot, but this is where the magic does happen. I am using Faber-Castell Polychromos color pencils and a Uniball Signo white gel pen, which is like a gift from the heavens. You do not have to use the same materials as me to achieve the results that you want. I would recommend using whatever makes you comfortable. You can see that with this white gel pen, I'm really able to add a level of dimension to the rocket ship and glare where glare is appropriate. Stay tuned for the final reveal of this comic strip after the music segment.
Okay, now for the music.
Today we're going to be working in Logic Pro X, and I first select a 5/4 time signature and 74 beats per minute. The 5/4 time signature is going to add suspense appropriate for outer space. Here we're creating a bass ostinato, which is a repeated rhythm or motif. I notated the rhythm pattern in Sibelius for you to see here. The rhythm clapped out is as follows: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and. Now we will add the chordal pads. I'm using augmented chords to create dissonance. To get an augmented chord, you raise the fifth of the triad by 1/2 step. This is an F major chord, and this is an F augmented. You can hear the dissonance, quite appropriate for the outer space theme. Okay, so we do some quantizing and some editing of the notes. We're just looking for a repeating descending pattern so that we can play some theremin over top of it. I apologize for the fact that the only thing in focus is the theremin itself. That's due to my inexperience making these videos. We will cut out the sections we want to keep, and we will add delay, and we will lower it in the mix in the finished product. One really cool trick is we're going to move our bass line down to an external MIDI track, and we will send the information to this Moog Mother 32 via MIDI, and we can now sweep the filter and the resonance knob as we record it back into the DAW. You'll notice that we increase the cutoff and the resonance, creating a sharper tone. I play with the decay here, experimenting with lengthening it, but in the end, I do not use that. But it is all about trying things out. Now we're going to automate some fade outs, and we're going to add percussion. The great thing about Logic Pro and any other modern DAW, you can automate pretty much anything from volume to pitch, as we're about to see. Now we're going to create a rise, and I'm going to put a cluster of notes at half-step increments, creating a real busy sound. And we're going to now automate the pitch to go from very low to very high over the course of one bar, creating that cinematic rise that you hear. We will also automate the gain of this clip. That'll work. Now for some percussion. I want to use melodic percussive elements in this piece, so I find a voice that sounds like a futuristic woodblock that could be pitched to different notes. I'm using all stock plugins that come with Logic for this project to keep things simple if you'd like to follow along. We add in a little automation, and then we sequence in some hi-hats. Again, pitched out and not quite hi-hats. And of course, we need some kick and some snare. Now I invite you to sit back and enjoy the final results of both of these projects. Hey, honey. We're going to the moon in the new rocket I built.
Daddy, are there aliens?
Of course not, honey.
Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe.